at the market, I mentioned ES. ES is an obvious corporate market for us because we can start having greener motoring with a lot of the cars that are out on Divide. We're starting to get a retail interest now, which is private people looking, making their own decision to go green. That's the bigger opportunity, and I'm not being selfish about selling cars, but the bigger opportunity for people to change their motoring habits.
It's funny you say that actually, but I for one have been thinking about it quite a lot in the last probably 18 months to 2 years, because there has been such a lot of talk in the media about sustainability and your carbon footprint. It's something I've looked into, and I think you touched on it earlier. There's some common misconceptions and there are some very common questions, one of them being, for instance, service charges are about batteries. You've already explained that there's an 8-year warranty on the battery. If you did have to change a battery, and bearing in mind this is a hybrid and not purely electric vehicle, what are the cost implications then, but not so much the cost, the ability to actually be able to disperse of that battery in the correct manner?
The second question is probably the more interesting one. Nowadays there are far more companies that you can recycle the battery. So we know that recycling the hybrid battery is covered. The cost of the battery is a cost. We've never got to that stage yet where a customer needs a new battery here. It will come, and I don't know off the top of my head, they're about probably $3,000 or $4,000. So it's not excessive cost at all.
3,000 or 4,000 is a lot lower than I would have expected, and even if you think about operating something, for instance, like an ambulance which carries extra batteries, then there would be a much higher cost in that in comparison to what you're doing now. What do you see happening in the future? Let's look at sort of hybrid technology in the next, say, 2 years.
2 years, hybrid technology, like any technology, just advances. So in the next 2 years, you will have a situation where the electric motors and the batteries become more efficient. So the want of the petrol engine becomes less. So they'll become much more efficient in terms of emissions and fuel economy.
There's a lot to talk about emissions and CO2 per kilometre if you're in Europe, but it's not something we necessarily speak about a lot here. How do you see things changing in that way as we reach, say, 2020? With Expo 2020, one of the boxes that we really want to tick is sustainability. So do you think that that's actually helping the automotive industry in the region?
I think it is. I think it depends on the awareness that people get. CO2, my country has become a very clear indicator because your tax is measured on it. So when it financially comes home to you, you then look very closely at the KPIs. Here, CO2 emissions are kind of in the periphery and probably quite confused. My view would be either we become more determined in terms of the CO2 level so people know it better and educate more, or the government puts some sort of benefit in place for that.
Is there ever a fear that hybrid technology will disappear as quickly as it seemed to emerge? Somebody was talking yesterday about mini disc players and Betamax tapes and how they were these amazing inventions, but they came and went in the blink of an eye. We're now talking about hydrogen fuel cells, which I know is something that you're really interested in as well. But is hybrid a flash in the pan?
I don't think it's a flash in the pan, no. I think, as I said, it's a stepping stone. Hybrid technology has been around, certainly in Europe, since 2004. It's been here since 2010. Wherever the future is, whether it be an electric vehicle or fuel cell, there's a huge amount of infrastructure has to be put in place, and that is decades of infrastructure. And to move everyone tomorrow to an electric vehicle or a fuel cell is clearly impossible. Hybrid will bridge that gap between a petrol engine or a diesel engine to that. So I think hybrid has got a range of 20, 30, 40 years before then we know where we get to at the end of the journey.
And how many years do you think we've got before we see flying cars?
Crikey. I honestly don't know. I'm still debating in my head autonomous cars.
Yeah.
Whether we then take an autonomous car into the air, it's beyond me.
What are your thoughts, while you've brought it up, what are your thoughts on autonomous vehicles? Because every manufacturer is doing some sort of development to some sort of autonomy.
I mean, there's autonomy in cars. We have cars autonomy. We have lane keep assist. We have the LS launch yesterday. We'll see a passenger in front of the car. If you do nothing, it will take over the steering. So there's a level of autonomy at different levels in most of the new cars on the market today. The question is, and we all live here and know what the driving's like in Dubai, would we ever see everyone driving autonomously? I mean, I wouldn't like to go out into the streets of Dubai today in a manufacturer's car that they say is autonomous. Personally, I wouldn't do it, not yet. I think I'm probably 20 years away before I'm brave enough to do it.
Yeah, and it is something, of course, that's been spoken about for many, many years. When we think about motoring, and of course we're here at Dubai International Motor Show, there's lots of things. You know, we look around and we see big SUVs, and we've got motorbikes over here, and there's lots of technology that's driven from here. One of the things, in fact, looking at the Dubai Autodrome stand behind us, is of course motorsport, and a lot of manufacturers still use a motorsport element to drive technology. Is there anything in terms of hybrid vehicles that has been tested on the circuit or has been taken from the circuit back onto the road?
Absolutely, both ways. I mean, you've got, certainly Le Mans at the moment, you've got hybrid vehicles, you've got a curse system in F1, you've got brake regeneration, and I think it goes both ways, where you've got a car on the road and then F1 or motorsport take it, or motorsport develop it and then bring it back into the car. I think it's probably, over the past few years, the one area that has been very high on priority, rather than just engines and chassis and gearbox. Certainly, hybrid technology and regenerative energy has been a key part of that.
And how much of your time and energy goes into looking into or certainly promoting and marketing the hybrid technology as opposed to the full combustion engine or electric vehicles?
It's probably out of sync at the moment. Our motor show stand here is all hybrid. We have a test drive in a few weeks from Media, which is all hybrid. But my hybrid sales this year will only be 4% of my total sales. Next year we're forecasting 10%. So it's a bit of a chicken and egg. If you do nothing, I don't think you'll get the growth. So we spend an disproportionate amount of our financial budget and time on green motoring. Some of that is because my principal Lexus gives me a wide product range, so I have a great opportunity there. Whether the market's ready for it or not, sometimes you have to push the market. So from a manufacturer distributor point of view, my commitment is to push the market. So we spend more than 4%. If I sell 4% of sales, I'm probably doing 24% of my effort, marketing and focus on green technology.
You touched on your demographic and who you appeal to. Who would you say you appeal to? Because we've already spoken about, in terms of being a dealer and having Lexus as your brand, it's a very strong brand. But would you say that there's a certain demographic within that?
Currently my demographic, 70% of my sales are Emirati locals, 30% are expat. My demographic is getting younger. To bring it back to hybrid motoring, who would I target? I target all of them. I think any manufacturer that kind of segments the hybrid and the green market down to sub 25-year-old is making a mistake. Everyone has got an interest in the green agenda, so to speak. So we will go to all our market with our hybrid offering. And I don't expect our hybrid sales to change from what was my petrol demographic. My hybrid will match it exactly.
As a woman, I feel that, especially as a product trainer as well, one of the things that I've noticed is a huge increase in the amount of input that women have to purchasing new vehicles. Do you think that from a hybrid point of view that women have been more interested in this sort of technology?
Yes, absolutely.
Is that just because we're, conscious and thinking about future generations?
I think it's a number of things. I disagree in terms of women. I think women have always had a big say in the car purchase. I think the industry's not been good to pick up on that, and I don't just mean in this country. In many countries, the industry doesn't pick up on it. I still see salesmen talking to the husband when he's always said, "It's my wife's car." I still see that in many showrooms, which is appalling, to be honest. I think
somebody's smiling.
It is shocking. I've seen it throughout the whole of my career. I've seen it. I think and I'm being very, very traditional here. Men like brake horsepower and speed, and women like brake horsepower and speed. I don't think there's any difference there. I just think women are probably a bit more aware of certain things when it comes to cars than men would be, or men would admit to. And I'm looking at myself here rather than men generally, because I know I'm probably going to get a lot of flack. But I think women look at a wider scope of what a car is about than, say, a man would.
Yeah, definitely, and I'm sure a lot of you would agree that there's differences when choosing a car to where you are in your life, what you're looking for, whether you're male or female, how old you are, so definitely different. Thereon poses the question, what vehicle do you drive yourself?
I drive a Lexus, obviously.
Yeah.
I'm just about to change to a 450h, to a hybrid. So I have to drive a Lexus, obviously. So.
Yeah, that's great. Any particular reason why you chose to change to the hybrid now?
It actually, and this sounds really strange, it's not easy, it's easier to drive physically to do it, but it's much more calming. When I get in the car in the morning now, I run a V8, and I know that's not nice, but you start it up, the engine growls, and suddenly your heartbeat starts. At my age, I don't really want that. When I start a hybrid, it's silent, and it'll come out of my garage, and where I live downstairs, it will just, the engine won't turn on until I've actually got onto the road. So I think for me, and I've tested obviously all of them, it's a much nicer way to start the day. It's probably the easiest way I can put it.
And not only nice for you, but imagine being in a community where people are able to reduce their speed and drive out of the community gets at a good speed and not make that noise. I've got a fantastic neighbour who I love to bits, who has an array of really nice sounding cars, but I know the days that he gets up at 5 o'clock and goes to work because I hear him passing the front of the house. Listen, Chris, thank you so much. I'm just going to end on one thing. Give us your sort of the biggest thing that we can look out for in terms of technology and the future of hybrid vehicles in the next, say, 10 years.
I think the biggest thing with hybrid vehicles is the competition is getting greater. My premium competition, the European brands, are bringing more and more cars in. I think hybrid will become the norm rather than the minority. If I look at the German brands, they have 3 or 4 on the stands now. There are some for sale in the UE, which I think is a positive. Competition's always positive. So I think over the next, say, if we sit here in 2 years' time and then 4 years' time, the public's choice of a hybrid, of a premium hybrid vehicle, will be much wider. And going back to what you said earlier, that will then increase the debate on what is CO2 emission, what is nitrous oxide, what's it doing. So I think that's always a good thing. I think probably in 8 years' time, depending what the final future solution is, hybrid will be more normal than a normal petrol car.
Chris, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Chris Buxton, Managing Director of Alpha Team Lexus. If you have any questions, by all means, we'd love to hear from you. Can I just ask the gentleman, what hybrid is it that you actually drive? Let me just see if I can get a microphone from the guys.
209.
Hang on 1 second. Yeah, what sort of hybrid are you actually driving? Well, hang on. He's coming back to you, I promise.
A Lexus 200H, about 7 years old.
Oh, really? Oh, this is great. So 7 years old and still going strong, and you're still enjoying it.
I agree entirely with the exit from the garage. It is very calming.
So what made you choose the Lexus and the hybrid in particular?
My wife.
See, we're good for some things. And what was her sort of thought about it then?
Excellent salesmanship in terms of being introduced to the car. And I agree with the wide spectrum. It's just the luxurious feel of it. So some people like harsh acceleration and heavy revving engines. Other people like a soft, smooth, luxurious ride. And I guess that's where my wife's influence came in.
That's good. When you're taking on new technology within the manufacturer, within the brand, do you have to, I mean, would you say to your sales staff that they have to look at selling a hybrid vehicle in a different manner to how they would sell anything else?
First of all, I get them to drive it. I think there's no substitute from getting my people to actually understand the car, understand the technology and drive it. I would never want to sell a car to anyone that doesn't suit them. The key to selling anything, not just a car, is understand what the customer wants, understand what they're asking for, and then being able to work out what you've got in your range to match it. Probably the issue is then making sure the customer knows the technology is there. With our X450H, and we've done well with that, a large part of that didn't come in to buy a hybrid. They came in to buy an RX. Our salesmen then, because there's no price difference, so there's no barrier at all, were trained to offer the hybrid as well with the benefits. And there is genuine benefits. There's nothing for us other than they do get, personally, I think, a greener car. So the key is understand the technology. My sales team have to understand it to be able to educate the customer. But then fundamentally the customer makes the decision. I never want to sell a car to a customer, it's not right for them.
Yeah, sorry, question from the floor.
Hi. What are you going to do about residual values? Have you looked at this in terms of what these cars are going to be worth 3-4 years down the line? Because I run a leasing business, and one of our biggest issues when it's new technology is what is the car going to be worth?
It's a very good question. At the moment, I'll be honest with you, the residuals are difficult to set because there's not a big market out there. The key to that is for the dealer to have a good used car operation. Your challenge is if you take hybrids on board, people will take them off you, but then you've got a big risk at the end of the day. I think that's where it's the commitment of the dealer to then have a good used car operation, whether you do a buyback or we build the residuals. The residuals in Lexus are high. The actual core brand has very high residuals. Hybrid residuals are a lot lower because it's new technology. Residuals on new technology is always very difficult, as I'm sure you've seen. But I think there's a commitment from the manufacturer stroke dealer to work on that, because I don't want to send a customer out in a hybrid where I know they change it in 2 or 3 or 4 years' time and it's worth 10% of the petrol equivalent, and that's not what the future's about. So we're doing all we can to start premium pre-owned so we can then support those residuals, because I'll be honest, it's only the manufacturer or the dealer that can do it. If I leave it to the market, leasing companies will suffer, and that's not fair, and then it gets a negative. So it needs for us to promote hybrid, to then promote it in used cars as well, because these cars are as good as a petrol engine. They'll last 10, 15 years.
And that's actually, I was going to ask you, I hadn't even recognised you there, but hello. So from a leasing point of view, do you now find that customers are coming to you and specifically asking to be greener?
Yeah, beginning to happen. We've had inquiries on Tesla, we've had inquiries on electric cars, particularly because I'm based out of Abu Dhabi a lot at the moment. But also we're looking at it as an opportunity for us as a company to set up a green division within it, where we will be leasing specifically hybrids and full-blown electric vehicles.
So people very much understand the hybrid market then?
Oh yeah, the market is coming there, but the risk comes when we're trying to set a lease rate. As you know, Chris, like, the guys at Tesla, for example, are setting guaranteed residuals. So once we've got that as a sort of support mechanism in place, then at least we can price accordingly. And I think I'll come talk to you later.
No, but I mean, it's part of the reason we did premium price as well, because you get a double whammy. If your hybrid's more expensive, and then you know your residual's not where the petrol is, it makes your job very difficult. So we can attack it at the front end by price parity, but on the back end it is for us to then work with companies such as yourself to then support it.
I know you've already said that it's great to have other manufacturers doing similar things out there, because it's competition, and that then helps all of us, because it's making us all work to improve in every way. Has it become more difficult more recently because there is a lot of marketing around some manufacturers that may not have the end game as being a manufacturer in 10 or 15, 20 years time?
Give me an example.
Okay, so a lot of the talk at the moment is that Tesla, the model on Tesla at the moment is very much kind of marketing in terms of the future of Tesla is more about the batteries. So obviously, as Bob was saying, that there are then advantages. It's an expensive vehicle, but there's advantages for instance, leasing companies. That must be quite difficult, knowing that Lexus is still going to be a brand known as a car manufacturer in 20 years, whereas Tesla may not be a manufacturer of vehicles in 20 years' time.
I think, Lexus is 28 years old. It's a very young brand compared to our European equivalents, which are 105 or 100 years old. It's the ability of the car manufacturer to stay competitive within the game as well. So whether we produce electric vehicles in the future, I don't think anyone's saying no or yes, because the market's moving at such a pace. I think the one thing that the company will always do is test it very, very hard. A car that comes into this market is tested beyond recognition sometimes, so that it actually fulfills the DNA of it lasts. This gentleman's got 7 years old and never breaks down, is totally reliable. As to what the future of, in 20 years' time, what we'll be buying, is the pace at the moment is too quick. I don't think, I certainly can't answer that question. I don't think whether I'll be driving. I'd like to be driving. I don't want a computer to take over. I love driving. But whether we'll be driving in 20 years' time, as you know, the car industry over the past 10 years has gone through more change than it's gone through in the previous 100 years. And that will just quicken and quicken and quicken and quicken. I think the car companies are putting an enormous amount of research and development to see what the future is. And the two ones are what's going to power you and who's going to drive. And never before have car companies done the amount of work they're doing now. And as you said, different players come into the market who are not car companies. So software companies, phone companies are coming in. It's under a tremendous amount of change. Anyone who can tell me the future, you want them on this city.
We certainly do. So if we've got any further questions from the floor? No? So just to tell us then, whereabouts are you based? Which hall are you based in if we want to come and find you?
Where in?
No.
Sheikh Zayed Hall.
Sheikh Zayed Hall. Okay. What have you got on your stand? That's okay. What have you got on your stand that we can come
We've got a whole range of hybrid. So we've five hybrid models that you can buy today, from a small sedan, small hatchback, to a sports, to a large sedan. We launched the LS 500H, which is our new large sedan hybrid, but literally the stand is all hybrid. And there's not one concept car, not one car in the future now. They're all here and now. So my main message is we can provide a solution today. I think you've probably heard that I don't see any negative in that solution at all. In fact, there's more positives. It's just the change that I think people have to get used to, of something different.
So there we go. If you want to check out Lexus, please do go along to the stand. I'm sure they'd love to see you there. And I'm sure there'll be plenty of social media coming out of the motor show as well. Chris, thank you so much for joining us today. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you soon. Have a great show for, how many days have we got left? I feel like I've been here a week. Still another 4 or 5 days to go. So thank you very much. We'll be back at 3 o'clock. And again, thank you very much to Chris.
Thank you for your time.